of the province there, Nomvula, but also just talking about what has happened. Premier, good morning to you. Welcome.
Morning, Vu, and morning to the.
How are you feeling now?
I'm quite optimistic. I'm looking forward to the declaration. We've dealt with some of the reports from commissions, and I'm quite sure that this conference will be a watershed conference that takes us into the second century of the African National Congress.
Okay, we've talked a lot about leadership. Let's talk a little bit more about the policies. What are the key things that are emerging and that are going to guide South Africa and where we're going as a country in the next 5 years?
Amongst other things that are quite important in guiding South Africa for the next 5 years are issues around fighting unemployment, inequality and joblessness, looking at how we build macroeconomic enterprises, how we make sure that there's access to finances, how we mainstream the needs and aspirations of young people as well as women, and most importantly, how we utilize the state in terms of the rollout of massive infrastructure for job creation, for growing the economy, but also for improving the quality of life of our ordinary people.
Let's start with the first one. So how do you deal now? Because we've been talking about pushing back the frontiers of poverty for such a long time. How are we going to do it differently with this generation of leadership?
The implementation of the National Development Plan is one of the most important drivers, making sure that the NC develops capacity to monitor the implementation of our own mandate in government is one of the things that has come out quite strongly under organizational renewal, that those that are deployed to go and realize the aspirations of the ANC members on behalf of the people of South Africa must be held accountable on periodic level. But secondly, we must make sure that we've got credible systems in government that ensure that there's actual delivery. Thirdly, one of the things that is also quite good for my province is the acceptance that there's a need in the country for an urban development strategy. We've got a rural development strategy, but if you really want to look after this golden egg, like Gauteng, you definitely need to make sure that you've got an urban development strategy that then looks at migration patterns, that looks at growing a knowledge-based economy, that makes sure that you diversify in terms of beneficiation, and lastly, that does not only look at the growth of the economy, but also creates sustainable jobs. So the numbers in terms of the growth of the population in Gauteng comes as an opportunity, but it also gives us the space to address what is happening in the rural areas, because as we deal with the influx into the urban areas, the NC has also acknowledged that people move from rural areas because of assumptions that there are greener pastures in urban areas. Whilst urbanization is an international phenomenon, we must also invest. And I'm sure we have seen how Waterberg in Limpopo has started to pay dividends, the Richards Bay, the Kucha development. But what is important with Gauteng is the development of the Aerotropolis, the expansion of the Gazeni depot, the rollout of additional freeways, new roads in the province.
This is going to be absorbing people in terms of those jobs and addressing this unemployment thing.
Creating jobs and making sure that you create infrastructure for economic activities. And those are the things that have been put even in the commissions that are dealing with economic transformation. Those are the issues that have been raised in terms of governance to say, let's have seamless development.
But Premier, look at what has happened with the building of infrastructure. Look at 2010. Stadiums, lots of people employed. After that, built, done, refed it, and then people are unemployed again.
Our interventions here, we've said, we've always been harping on building on the legacy of the World Cup. And yes, there are pockets of that we have already done. And in Gauteng, we also have one major project that we're building on, the Gautrain, the success of the story of Gautrain. And therefore, the eThekwini-Johannesburg rail corridor comes quite handy. Having learned from the Gautrain development, we must make sure, and conference has actually called that, you need those massive infrastructure development projects that do not only yield short-term jobs during construction, but also that create new skills and most importantly, create infrastructure for a viable economy.
Now, you're talking about making funding available for small emerging businesses. How are you going to do it differently? There's all these agencies that are there, but people continue to complain.
One of the things that we have done was to actually have a fragmented approach. We are already looking at the creation of a one-stop shopping center, so that then you can then different agencies and different services under one roof. And for us in Gauteng, this has also come quite handy, because we are already looking at a one-stop shop kind of investment outlet that is going to be based in Sandton. It's driven by our Department of Economic Development together with SARS as well as the national government, so that then an investor walks into one site and the investor gets the answer. It works with an SMME. It works with women in cooperatives. We've also said it's not about running workshops for them. It's about looking after them from cradle to grave, and that also includes funding, but also helping them on how to manage their funds.
So what future then for Gauteng Enterprise Propeller and those kinds of agencies?
That's exactly what we have. The thing that I'm raising, that some of the resolutions that are coming out here are strengthening already what is on the ground, like the Gauteng Economic Propeller, the Gauteng Growth and Development Agency, where we have integrated many agencies, and that is exactly what the ANC is coming out with. And what is important about ANC conferences is that whatever is decided in this conference must find expression in what you are doing in government. And I'm quite comfortable that the apple has not fallen far from the tree.
Okay. Let's talk about Gauteng's two centers of power, where the chairperson is different to the premier. How is that going to be dealt with now that the elections has happened? Is there a unity plan? Is there a unity idea? Conversations? Where are we going?
I've been in this office from the time when Comrade Paul was the chairperson of the ANC, and I'm still the premier. What I forever respect is exactly that we serve at the behest of the ANC. And I'm no half ANC, and we work very well. You have to have systems, you have to have structures of relating, because it's not about personal relationships and choices. It's about all of us doing our work in the best interest of the ANC. So moving forward, he had his choice. He was calling for change. Everybody knew him calling for change, and he knew from the onset that I was calling for continuity and renewal of the African National Congress. I wished him well, and my preference actually came out. Now that the conference is over, we must all look at what needs to be done. And I'm quite hopeful Gauteng will rise to the occasion.
What does that mean?
We will actually deal with those that assume that Gauteng will go to the opposition. It will never actually happen. We can go back with pride and confidence to our communities and say we have made a difference. We can go and account on the 18 years of being in government, but even this current 4 years of being in government, we can account on how we have improved the lives of our people and where a lot still needs to happen. And it is up to the ANC members, and that's what conference has said. ANC members must own up on the development and the work that government is doing, but they must also be capacitated by government, those who are deployed, providing them information, and those of us who are councillors, who are ward councillors, who are premiers, who are MPs and MPLs, must also remain in touch with our people and not go during election period. We've done it in Gauteng. It's part of our day-to-day program.
It seems to be up in the air, the slates idea. Some are saying there's no slates. Others are saying there are slates. What's your perspective? Are there slates, and do they work for the ANC in the current climate?
We don't need slates. But what we need to accept is that contestation will forever be there. And where there is contestation, we don't have to be very ill-disciplined. We don't have to be vulgar. We do not have to undermine individuals' choices and rights. And there must not be any victimization. And I think what is important is for us then to make sure that there are permutations from all sides. And permutations does not mean looking at the list of those that are having something on the right and those that are having a list from the left. You need to actually look at the pool that the ANC has and the strength and capabilities that individuals have, and that would actually, my view is that would actually kill what is perceived to be a slate. What is dangerous is factions that are based on personal interests and not contestation of views. We must condemn that.
Are the views contested, or is it more personalities? Because a lot of the time, even in the build-up to this, it seems the focus has been on personalities, the who, and not the quality of the argument.
For the duration of this conference, there was contestation on views and hence commissions. And I think that's what my wish is. I so wish many people can understand how the ANC functions. Contestation of views takes place within the structures of the ANC. Going to commissions, you don't have everybody agreeing. That's why commissions will go up until early hours of the morning. We are now at plenary. Delegates who were not in one commission are now engaging a report that comes from another commission. And that's contestation of views. But then we find consensus out of those deliberations. And thereafter, a view then emerges as a view of the African National Congress, and that has to be embraced.
One of the analysts who was here with us was saying within the ANC, there is not an issue around developing policies and that, but it's about a political will to implement and make things work and happen.
It's about the political will and the right warm bodies. I think time has come for the ANC to not just look at the deployment on the basis of people being in the leadership of the African National Congress, but it must also be on what you can be able to deliver within that collective. And once you are in the collective, what is important is how that collective works in unison. We need one voice. We need many voices but one message. The other important thing is to ensure that once we work together, we must have a plan for implementation. The good thing about the organizational renewal report is that it's calling for a decade-long program of action of organizational renewal, and all the plans that we're working on are plans that are looking at how things must be done. And this conference was mostly on that, because policy, we have actually dealt with it at the National Policy Conference. So out of this conference, we are going to get an action plan. And I hope that the more than 1 million members of the ANC will be ambassadors of that plan.
All right, thank you very much. Let's leave it at that, talking about what's happening and the views of the province of Gauteng. You may have some thoughts. Why don't you